Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the 8.24 tier list. Be sure to check out also my patch notes and my support tier list for 8.24. If you want even more content on the patch, you'll find a link to that in the description in the Google Doc. And also in the Google Doc in the description, you'll find a little mini guide for each one of the champions I'm going to be talking about. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to another Google Doc with a link to the wiki with all the information about the champion's abilities. I have a rating system 1 to 5 for each champion. And then I have recommended runes, recommended items, which are a template that could, of course, change depending on what's going on in the game. But that's a good place to start thinking. As far as the rating system goes, it's a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the champion is one of the worst at whatever that particular task is for the role, and then a 5 being that champion is one of the best at the role at whatever that particular task is. Lane pressure is just how likely is the champion able to get priority and just assert their will in the laning phase. Kill threat is how likely is the champion able to get kills in the laning phase. Safety is how safe is the champion from ganks and how well can they position in team fights as the game goes on. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is how consistent is the champion. How likely is it that a player can put up similar results over the period of several games. Right, and so a couple of things go into that. Number 1, how difficult is the champion to play mechanically? Number 2, how difficult are the decisions to make on the champion? And then number 3, how well does the champion fit into the meta? Are there a lot of counter picks out there? Does the champion play well with popular supports and other champions that might be on your team? Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. So up near the top, there's not too much of a shakeup. We've got Lucian, Jhin, Draven, Misfortune, and Twitch. Let's talk about Lucian first really quick. Oh, and just as a side note here as well, this is intended for a plat-minus audience, so you might see a different meta if you're looking at pro-level games, you're looking at challenger-level games. And then I'll also heavily consider that this is for people with a moderate amount of practice, so not one-tricks, but not necessarily people that are first-timing the champion either. And then I'll also consider the meta pretty heavily, like how well does the champion going to perform moving forward. So we'll look at stats, but we're not going to be solely basing it on stats because stats are always backward-looking, and we want to look forward and see what's going to be strong in the upcoming patch over the next couple of weeks. Okay, so Lucian's still going to be number 1. I mean, he's overpowered. I think pretty much everybody understands this at this point, so I'm not going to, spend a ton of time on this, but he just has an extreme amount of lane pressure. He basically comes to the lane, and every time he uses an ability, he pretty much gets a critical strike. Is an easy way to think of it. And that double shot, not only is it kind of like a little crit, is a good way to think of it, but it also interacts with really powerful items like Blade the Ruined King and like Black Cleaver. So every time he does an ability, he does a double shot, which gives him, an extra 50% of his AD total damage. So it's not exactly the same as a crit, but pretty close. He does a ton of base damage. That's the thing, is like this has 85 base with a 0.6 bonus attack damage ratio and gives you an extra 50% of your total AD. So if you come to lane, and you have like maybe 30 bonus attack damage after your runes and after, your first item or two, when I say 30, then you're going to be getting whatever 60% of that is, like 18 extra damage on this. That's 103 damage, and you're getting 50% of your base. If you have 30, you're going to have somewhere near like 80 attack damage. That's 40 on top of that. So you're going to be getting 40 damage, 125 damage, plus 18, like 160 damage off of an ability that costs 50 mana, which is just absurd. It's like 3 times the value, right? So you're getting like 3 points of damage for every point of mana that you invest in this, kind of in the early game. And that's just an insane amount of damage. And he scales very well over time. So and the abilities synergize with each other very well as well. So, every time you get those double shots off, it lowers the cooldown on Relentless Pursuit, allows you to reposition very easily. Very short cooldown ult, which is just a ton of damage if he's able to stick the whole thing on you. 400 damage, which is 1 point in this. That has a 500% AD ratio, not bonus AD, total AD ratio. So if you have 100 AD, this is dealing 500 extra damage. That's like 900 damage at level 6. Now, are you going to be able to hit them with every single shot? Probably not, but there might be some situations where you could hit them with a lot of it. I mean, hell, you could miss half of it for that rate, right? So even if it has like 900 potential damage, if you just hit them with half of that, that's 450 damage on an ult. That's 110 second cooldown. That's insane. That's just, you just have to hold it on him for a second and a half. You get 3 seconds to hold it on him for a second and a half. any kind of CC that your support applies to them, you're going to be able to stick them with a lot of that damage, most likely. Ton of range, too. 1200 range. So, I mean, it's just nuts. Like, it's so good. You can start the fight with this to get people poked down. You can finish the fight with this and run people down. You can also dash while you're channeling this to get even closer. So if they try to reposition, if they dash to try to get out of it, you can dash to, you know, put this back on them. You can kite people out really well if you hit them with this. And then auto-attack them. You get a bunch of extra attack speed. It has 85 damage at level 1. So you can just put 1 point in this early and have really good trades. So he's awesome at trading early. He has great mobility. He has really heavy scaling on 1 and 2 items, and that's very important in this meta right now, that you can be super strong off of 0 items and 1 item, because you're going to get camped a lot. There's a ton of damage in the bot lane in general. People are playing a lot of mages. You're going to be seeing a lot of Xayahs, a lot of Brands, Lux, Xerath, all kinds of stuff. Now, they did nerf Dark Harvest, so it's going to dial some of that stuff back a little bit. But overall, there's still going to be an abundance of damage in the game, particularly in the early game. And it's very important that you win the early game, because you can snowball even harder than usual off of those plates from the towers. So, you know, he does have relatively low range. He has 500 range, so he can get potentially abused by other early game powerhouse champions like Draven, like Jhin. But he can still go toe-to-toe with them. I mean, he still does a ton of damage. So that's just why he's the best. He's very good at 1 and 2 items. He kind of falls off a little bit at 3 items. You know, Blather King is extremely powerful because each one of your double shots applies the Blather King passive. And then Black Cleaver is really nice as well, because each one of his, you know, physical damage abilities, the ability itself and his double shot, are going to apply Cleaver stacks. And so that's going to increase your damage by a lot by shredding their armor, but it's also going to increase the damage of anyone else on your team that does AD damage. So, you know, if you have a Yasuo on your team, or you have an Urgot, an Irelia, Aatrox, any of these champions are going to love having those cleaver stacks. So, very, very good. Another benefit of Lucian is that you can actually go a relatively decent sort of defensive build. You can get Ninja Tabby early. Berserker Greaves are nice, but most of your damage comes from your abilities. And so you can still do a lot of damage even with Ninja Tabby. If you just Q someone, double shot them, dash, double shot them, you know, they're probably going to be dead or in kill range with your ult. So you can get away with going Ninja Tabby. And Black Cleaver gives you a good chunk of extra health with that 400 health. So that's going to really help you out against assassins quite a bit. And he also has that mobility that we mentioned before, so he's one of the best AD carries out there against assassins. He's still probably going to get blown up if a Kha'Zix gets in his face, but he's going to be much more likely to be able to survive that longer because of his defensive itemization. So just very well-rounded champion, scales really well off of 1 items, 2 items. 3's a bit of a drop-off, but then once he gets the Infinity Edge off of his 4th item, he's right back into business. So overall, super strong champion, very impressive. I think most people consider him the best. He is worth considering for a ban. Okay, Jhin, I moved up a little bit. I think that Jhin is super strong right now, not only because of the itemization, but because of the kind of supports that are running around right now. These mage supports and these like really long-range supports. He is obnoxious with Lux, Xerath, Vel'Koz, and then he's very good also with things like Xayah and Brand. The reason for that is he has really long-range hard CC, so off of his W, which roots people for an additional 0.75 seconds. Although I'm pretty sure this is what people max second. You might even max it first, but I think most people are probably still maxing Dancing Grenade, but I don't know, actually. I'd have to look and see. I think there could almost be an argument for maxing W second because of the extra root duration if you hit it consistently. But this is your wave clear. This is your push early, so, and it doesn't cost that much more mana. So, yeah, realistically, this is probably what you should be maxing. But still, even at 0.75 and as a second max, you're going to get a couple of points in this. Before level 9, I think you'll have like 2 or 3 points in this. So it's an extra 1 second root duration. Does pretty good burst damage. So he's great. Has nice wave clear with Dancing Grenade. Really good base damages. Remember, that's 40% of your total AD, not your bonus AD. So it's stronger than it appears. Chaining that together. And then being able to finish people off with this really long distance, low cooldown ult is awesome, particularly, once again, if you have something very long range, like a Lux or a Xerath or a Vel'Koz. You know, a combination, like hit someone with a Lux bind, you hit him with a W, Lux hits him with an E, she ults him, you ult him, or like Xerath and you both channel an ult. After, you know, he hits somebody with an E, you bind him with a W. You know, he just casts all of his spells, you cast all of your spells, and then just finish him off with your ults. It's just absolutely disgusting, some of the combinations that are possible out there right now in this meta with him. And he's pretty good with other supports, too. I mean, he has a lot of extra damage early on with his crit shot. He has pretty good movement speed for evading people and running people down. He scales extremely well off of 1 and 2 items, right? He's going to get Storm Razor, and then he's going to get Rapid Fire Cannon, both of which are excellent. Storm Razor in particular, because it counts as a crit in terms of activating his passive and the movement speed. But then Rapid Fire Cannon, because it gives you that extra range to proc your 4th shot on somebody or to proc your Storm Razor on somebody. So he's really, really good off of just 2 items. And then, of course, he can get Infinity Edge after that. So he's pretty good on 1, 2, and 3 items. But particularly on those first 2, he's super oppressive. And he's very good. I mean, historically, a major weakness of Jhin is he's not great into tanks. Guess what nobody's playing right now? Tanks. So that makes him inherently pretty good against assassin type of champions also, or like squishy fighter type of champs, squishy mages, supports, things like that, because he just kills them so fast they may not be able to kill him. You know, if he has his 4th shot ready, he might be able to do 90% of somebody's health with the Storm Razor. So he's very, very strong, and he's just notorious also. If somebody's fairly low and he gets that 4th shot, he can just flash, auto Q, and they're gonna die. Even under tower he can do that. Sort of under tower he can take like 1 or 2 shots to do that. So super dangerous champion, especially in a meta that's dominated by really heavy damage and mages in the bot lane. Now Dark Harvest is really good too, because each one of your ult shots can trigger Dark Harvest again. So if you kill somebody with 1 ult shot, you know, a second and a half later you can be able to trigger Dark Harvest again on another ult shot. So Dark Harvest did get nerfed, but his ability to poke people out and finish them off with his ult, his long range on his W, you know, the grenade bouncing to harass people under tower and get those Dark Harvest procs, make him really, really strong. So you just want to go Dark Harvest, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter. This will give you 2 sources of healing in lane. Little nice scaling rune there for you. Dark Harvest procs for nice scaling. And then Mana Flow Ban, because you will chew through your mana early by spamming grenades, but it's totally worth it. It's very strong. And then Absolute Focus, because they should be lower than you most of the time in fights, right? You have 2 ways to heal, and you're going to be poking them out. So Absolute Focus, really good. Also, when you get that nice, clean hit on them, when you're full health, you have your 4th shot, plus Rapid Fire, Storm Razor, you know, just starting off the fight, having that extra AD is so strong because that scales really well into critical strike, obviously. So, very, very good. Just Storm Razor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, and he gets boosts of swiftness so that he gets the maximum amount of in-combat movement off of his auto attacks. Remember, he doesn't gain a ton off of attack speed, so you obviously don't need Berserker Greaves. And if you are positioning properly, you probably shouldn't need Ninja Tabby either. So that's why people get swiftness on him. Yeah, Berserker converts over to some AD, but you'd much, much rather have that movement speed, trust me. Okay, so Jhin's still going to be super strong. I think Draven is still up there. I mean, Draven is always a threat. He's one of the best one-tricks out there, probably the best one-trick champion of all time, AD carry, at least in the last few years. And I talk about this all the time with Draven, so I won't spend more time with it, but he basically comes to lane with a free BF sword. This is... you know, each one of his auto attacks, if you're catching axes, gives you 35 damage plus 65% of your bonus AD. You know, if you're coming into lane, even with 20 bonus AD, that's going to be 45 damage. That's a BF sword. So it's like he comes to lane with a triple kill or a quad kill, you know? Now, it's not quite the same because this, like, bonus doesn't scale with his other abilities, but it's on every single auto attack. I mean, it's about as close as you can get to getting flat AD. So that makes it really easy to last hit with him. That makes it really easy to harass with him. He takes Conquer, so he does a ton of upfront damage. All he has to do is hit you once or twice, and you're going to be below 50% health. So he has really nice trading, and he can afford to go a couple of different builds. So he can get lifesteal early if he wants to, They just did buff Death's Dance. It's not amazing on him. I mean, it's still good on him. He didn't gain a lot out of it, is what I mean to say, because he's all physical damage. The true damage that you do off of Conquer now heals you, so that's nice. Death's Dance is still okay. A lot of people don't get that on him, but it's still a decent option. Most people are going to get either Bloodthirster or Stormraiser. Stormraiser is good if you really want that, you know, if you're really just slamming the lane, you want to get that huge Stormraiser proc and just delete people. Bloodthirster is a little bit more measured if it's an even lane or if you're behind and you want that extra lifesteal. The nice thing about this is this bonus damage applies lifesteal. So that's why you see a lot of lifesteal on Draven. You know, if you've ever wondered, why does he get Bloodthirster but no other AD carry does it? It's because he gains so much off of the lifesteal because of his Q. So, does a ton of upfront damage, has really nice steroids that can stay up for a long time in fights. As long as you keep catching your axes, you can keep spamming this. Stand Aside is actually a pretty good defensive tool. Not only does it act as like a little CC to slow people, but it stops movement. So, you know, if Leona's trying to go onto you, which is a very common scenario right now, if she tries to E onto you, you can stand aside and knock her out of that. You can, if Thresh like hooks your support or something like that, you can knock him out of that. Zac tries to engage on you. Nautilus tries to hook you. You can just stand aside and knock a lot of people out of the way. Tristana tries to jump on you. There are so many scenarios where that can be a very, very powerful disengage tool. And then, of course, you have this ultimate, which is a great execute, does a ton of damage on a relatively short cooldown. So he's awesome, especially if you can get him with Leona, Xayah, someone else that's doing a ton of damage. He's able to stack on a lot. And, of course, as everyone knows, you get a ton of extra gold off of Draven whenever you get kills. So it lets you snowball even harder, which is very important in this meta. You need to be strong early. And if you can snowball and abuse people hard in the laning phase, that means you're going to get more plates, which means you're going to scale even harder. That's going to give you dragons, which just got empowered even more. So you really, really want to get going early. And Draven is one of the best champions at doing that. So we're just going to do Conquer, Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. And then, you know, take your choice, either Stormraiser or Bloodthirster. Whatever you don't get first, get the next one second. I guess you could go Stormraiser, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge, but I would probably get a double AD item. I'd just go big because he scales so hard off of flat AD. I mean, attack speed's nice, but the flat AD gives him that extra Q damage. You're not going to be... You don't need to land a ton of auto attacks on people to kill them with Draven. If you have a lot of AD, you can kill them in like 2 or 3 auto attacks. So attack speed loses some of its value just because the fight's going to be over so quickly anyways. It's nice because you do get your first shot off faster if you have more attack speed, but it's not as necessary on him as it is on other champions that might have to auto attack, you know, 6 or 7 times to kill somebody, where he can do it in double time. So, very, very nice. Strong champion, particularly if you're very well practiced on him. Misfortune, once again, you're seeing a theme here. These are all very good early game, and they're very strong on 0 or 1 items. Misfortune, same thing, right? Has a ton of upfront damage early on. Her Q just does an eye-popping amount of damage if you kill somebody with it. Or if you kill obviously if you kill somebody. But if you like bounce it off a minion that dies, it just does an absurd amount of damage. It critically strikes for 100% bonus damage. So, you know, if you have like 80 AD when you're level 5 or so, now remember this is total AD, not bonus AD. You have 80 AD. This does an extra 60. So that's 140 critical strike, 240 damage off of basically no items. Because you're going to have your base damage, which is whatever, you know, probably about 60 by level 5. And then you're going to have, you know, your Doran's Blade. And then you're going to have your runes. So, you know, it's pretty easy to get to 70 or 80 AD. And just off of 1 Q, you know, that costs 49 mana, you're going to be able to do whatever that number was, between 250 and 300 damage. It's just crazy. And then if you trigger Dark Harvest off of that, then you're going to be doing even more. It's going to be, you know, an extra 20 or 30 damage off of that. So you can very easily, you know, knock off half of somebody's health with no items at level 5 if you're triggering this Q and killing the minion with it as you hit them. So just an insane amount of damage. It can also trigger Love Tap, I'm pretty sure, which is an extra 60 damage. So whatever I just said, like what, 250, 260 damage, it goes to over 300 damage with Love Tap. Because I'm pretty sure it applies to this. That was not the target of her previous ability. Not 100% about that. Double up kills the first target. It'll critically strike. Applies on hit effects, including love tap. Yep. Says it right there. So I'm just blind. Yeah, so including love tap. So, I mean, it's like over 300 damage off of a basic ability that's on a 5-second cooldown. Now, yeah, you have to hit it correctly and bounce it at him. So it does take some practice to get that. But it's just like, it's mind-blowing damage. I'm sure y'all have been hit by this before, especially if you get Dustblade as your first item. I mean, it's almost one-shot territory against squishies once you get Dustblade. It's pretty damn close. So, very strong. She has nice movement speed. This is great for rotations. It's great, you know, so that you can back and grab a couple of long swords, get back to lane faster than an opponent, so it gives you favorable backs. It does give you some attack speed later. You know, you're not going to be auto-attacking that much as Misfortune probably, but it's kind of nice, you know, if you need it. Make It Rain is actually a lot better than people think it is because it's just a point-click slow that you can't miss, and it makes it really easy for your support to hit their skill shots. So if you Make It Rain on somebody, there's a very high probability the Xayah is going to hit her roots, the Leona is going to be able to hit her E, the Thresh is going to hit his hook, you know, Nautilus is going to hit his hook, the Lux is going to hit her bind. It's kind of like Jhin in that respect, where she synergizes really, really well with a lot of these high burst mages and hook champions in the bot lane right now. So, very, very good ability for setting up other people. It also sets up your ultimate. So if you cast Make It Rain on them from 1,000 units away, that's very far. You can't miss it. It's just a point-click area of effect. And then channel your bullet time. You're probably going to delete some people. And bullet time not only does a ton of damage to single targets, but it also just completely erases team fights. So if you ever have an actual 5v5 team fight, which is kind of rare in this meta, but if it does happen by some miracle, you can hang out really far in the back, very safe from a lot of those frontline champions, and just completely delete people. So that makes Misfortune very strong. Now, she is vulnerable if you're sitting there trading auto attacks, just flat auto attacks with someone like a Jhin who has his 4th shot, or a Draven, or a Lucian. If Lucian gets in your face and starts comboing you, you're going to die, right? So you need to be careful about that. So you have to be poking people with your Qs relatively long range, setting up your support with your Make It Rain, and then whenever your support engages or somebody else engages, or you see an opportunity to Make It Rain and then bullet time them, you can really do a ton of damage. So she does kind of fall off later in skirmishes. So if you get caught out, you're probably going to die. You don't have very good escape mechanisms. You don't have a lot of upfront burst if minions aren't there to bounce your double up off of. So that can be a little rough if you get caught out in the jungle, or if you get caught up in these kind of very small scale skirmishes against highly mobile champions. You know, you're trying to fight a Riven, you're trying to fight a Camille, something like that. They're going to give you a hard time. So you really want to stay with your team with Misfortune more so than some of the previous AD carries. You always want to be with your team. But, you know, Draven and Jhin can take care of business on their own, you know, one-on-one against a lot of squishy champions. Misfortune, a little bit less so. So, very strong, but just be a little bit more cautious with her. I still think Dark Harvest is where you want to be because you have such great poke damage early, and if you get resets in fights, you can proc a couple of Dark Harvest off of Misfortune's ult, potentially. And you can use things like Make It Rain. If someone has a Dark Harvest stack on them, you just point-click Make It Rain, and you're going to trigger it. So it's very easy to stack up those Dark Harvests. Taste of Blood, good healing in lane. Ultimate Hunter allows you to have your ult up more often. Very powerful ult, like we talked about before. And then Mana Flow Ban helps you out with kind of your mana issues early because you don't want to have to buy any mana items on her. And then Absolute Focus is great for harassment early. I could see a world where you could go something like Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. So you have even more ultimates and you kill people when they're low. Combo is really great with Dark Harvest. So you can experiment with that if you want. I think that having the mana and just having the flat bonus AD early is important, but you can sort of figure that out. And someone said in chat, you know, before, well, what's the point? You only get 3 extra AD off of Absolute Focus. It's like, that's at level 1. At level 5, you're getting 8 AD. And just for perspective on that, AD is worth about 35 gold each. So, what, you're getting 280 gold value at level 5 off of this that scales as the game goes up to 24. I mean, if you get to even like 20, which is like level 15, you know, you're talking like an 800 gold value off of a minor rune later on. That's a lot, especially something early on where you're getting like 280 gold value, and then later into the game it also scales to be like an 800 gold value. It's easily one of the most powerful minor runes in the game. It's very, very strong. So don't let that 3 AD early on fool you. It is a powerhouse. When you consider things like Transcendence, right, gives you nothing until you're level 10. And even at level 10, 10% cooldown reduction is about a 266 gold value. So Absolute Focus gives you more gold value at level 5 than this would give you at level 10. Think about that for a second. And so it's really strong. If we look at something like Gathering Storm, right, the premier scaling AD rune, right, in order to, you would have to go higher than 30 minutes. You would have to hit the 40-minute mark before you could match Absolute Focus, right? So at 30 minutes, it's 29 AD, whereas Absolute Focus, you know, something close to that. Well, okay, it passes it up at 30 minutes. Sorry, I miscalculated that. But at 20 minutes, it's only going to be 14, versus Absolute Focus is going to be more than that at 20 minutes. So, yeah, Gathering Storm does pass it up at 30 minutes, true. But you can take both if you want. They don't even have to compete with each other. You can get Absolute Focus plus Gathering Storm if you want to. But I think that Mana Flow, you just want to have that early game power, as I mentioned before. That's why I'd kind of moved away from Gathering Storm with some of these champions that can really leverage their mana early. But, you know, you could go Gathering Storm if you think the game's really going to go late. And then does Duskblade, Ghostblade, Black Cleaver is what I would do. You just want that lethality as much as possible. Make your abilities hit even harder. Duskblade gives you more burst. Ghostblade gives you extra mobility and safety. And then Black Cleaver gives you an excellent AoE shred that benefits your whole team. You might even get Cleaver earlier if no one else on your team is going to get Black Cleaver and you have like a couple of other AD champions. It might even be worth it just to go something like Duskblade into Cleaver. I wouldn't go Cleaver first. I'd get something with lethality first. But you could get Cleaver instead of your second lethality item if you wanted to. Okay, so really strong champ. Twitch, he's always going to be top 5, I think. I almost put him in a tier 2, but it's just so hard to do it because he's just so versatile, right? He's just so good in like almost all game states, and he has a really high win rate, right? He has a higher win rate than Jhin. He has a higher win rate than Draven. But I just think that like, and a higher win rate than Lucian. But I just feel like in the meta, if he falls behind early, it can be really hard for him. But he has a very good single item power spike. I mean, people think that Twitch, it takes forever for him to come online. It does not. You know, in the laning phase, you know, like 1 through 5, it's kind of rough for him. But he's really, really strong off of Blade of the Ruined King. He has a very strong 1, 2, and 3 item power spike. Blade, Hurricane, Infinity Edge. He's very, very good. So what makes Twitch then someone that has such a high win rate, or someone that in a meta that seems to be dominated by the early game, why would you put someone that's kind of weak into the top 5, weak in the early game? Well, it's because he has a lot of catch-up mechanics. That's the thing. And because once he gets that item, like I said before, he is actually really strong. So he's only slow in the sense that levels 1 to 5, he can get bullied. But not as hard as some other champions. I mean, his poison does add up early. But he just scales so hard off of levels. So what are his mechanics that allow him to catch up? Well, number 1 is stealth. Anything that can go invisible is going to be really strong in solo queue because no one respects it. No one's like, hey, I don't see Twitch. I need to be a little bit more cautious, right? No one does that. Like below Diamond especially, right? Like people are just going to mindlessly push the side lane. They're just going to push up, and then they're just going to complain and ping the bot lane whenever Twitch shows up invisible and kills them, right? So it allows you to get kills. It tilts the enemy team because they're going to start blaming each other whenever you start sneaking up and getting kills on people. And so that's just always very powerful. And that's true of a lot of invisible champions. That's true of Eve. It's true of Twitch. People go nuts over Akali's invisibility. So invisibility is just a very tilting mechanic, and it's very powerful. And to give it to an AD carry, especially for this duration, right? Like, you can hide in... This is the thing you max second. So you're going to get some points in it eventually. But even at level 1, you can hide for 10 seconds. You can sit there all day and wait on your support to get a catch. Or wait on your jungler to catch up and get an engage, right? So you can sit there and wait all day. And it's not only stealth, it gives him bonus attack speed. So it gives him this extra, you know, between 30 to 50% attack speed. Now they nerfed this. It used to be much higher than that, but it's still, it doesn't even need to give him any bonus. This would be good if it didn't give him any bonus attack speed, but he gets bonus attack speed off of it, and it resets. So, you know, if you get a kill on somebody in a team fight, you pop up invisible, you kill somebody, you can go invisible again, reposition, and then pop up again. You know, you can sneak up and kill somebody, go invisible. You can kill somebody in a side lane. They're all trying to collapse and get you. You can go invisible and run away. And he gets movement speed when he's running towards champions. So he gets 10% overall bonus movement speed. And it goes up to 30. So it's just a super overloaded ability. Right? 10 seconds of stealth, bonus attack speed, resets, and increased movement speed. It's like 4 different things that are insane on this ability. And then Contaminate just has crazy scaling on it. They did buff the Contaminate damage, I think, when they nerfed the attack speed on the Q a while ago. But, like, look at these ratios. If you get max stacked on somebody, and this is what you max first, right? So, even at level 5, bonus damage per stack. Okay, so base physical damage. So, you do extra physical damage to everybody that are affected with this. And so you do like 90 plus, well, that's the burst whenever you activate it. So it's 190 with a 210% of your bonus AD to everybody that's affected by this. Guess what helps spread the poison? Hurricane and your ultimate, which are, you can have both of those. So you can get this poison on everybody in a team fight. And early on, it's a really powerful trading mechanism. I mean, 200%, 210% of your bonus AD with 110 base. If someone sits in your poison or fights you for an extended period of time, you can do a lot of damage off of that. So, now, Venom Cask is not that great. It does stack some poison and does apply a slow. It's pretty anemic, but these 2 abilities alone are really strong. And then this ultimate is just ludicrous. It's on a 90-second cooldown. It gives you 850 attack range. That's like tower attack range. This is like 200 more attack range than a Caitlyn by comparison. So he has this like ludicrously long attack range that hits everybody in a line. AoE hits everybody and applies his poison and applies on-hit effects. So it applies Blade of the Ruined King to everybody. So you can apply Blade to everybody, and you're also going to be stacking your poison up on everybody with this. So you apply Blade, you stack your poison up on everybody, and then that sets you up for a Contaminate pentakill. And it lifesteals off of everybody. And it can critically strike. Once you, later on, if you get Hurricane plus Infinity Edge. So, it's just ridiculous. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I see a lot of Twitches mess this up. And you get bonus AD. I forgot about that. So you get an extra, you know, bonus amount of AD off of it. Do not attack people through minion waves with this. Right? So, if you open up his Twitch and start attacking and you hit, like, through 3 minions, you're only going to be dealing 40% of your base damage. That's not 40% of this bonus damage. That's 40% of your base damage. So, if you would normally auto-attack for 100, this gives you 20 extra, right? Well, now you're only going to be doing 40% of that. So, you're only going to be doing 48 damage. So, normally you would do, you know, 100 damage, but if you turn this on, you attack through a minion wave, all of a sudden you're only doing 48. So that's why it can feel like Twitch is actually losing damage off of his ult, because he can actually lose damage if you attack through a minion wave. So don't do that. Do not attack through minion waves with this. Also, do not go into melee combat with this. I see a lot of Twitches want to open up right next to a Darius or something like that and start spraying praying. It has 850 range. You can still stay at Caitlyn's auto attack range, and you'll still hit them if they flash. Maybe not quite that extreme, but it's close. Like, you can still stay really far away, and you're going to be in range, even if they use some of their escape mechanisms. So, that just makes him very strong and versatile. So, it's like, early on, you know, once you get to level 6, you have a pretty good steroid here that you can open up and kill people with. The stealth allows you to sneak up and kill people because you're stealth for days. So it allows you to get solo kills. It makes it very difficult for the enemy to target and shut you down in team fights because you can wait until you see their crowd control and then you can go on them. And he has awesome team fighting with this. He has great dueling, especially once he gets the Blade of the Ruined King, because if the fight goes longer than like 3 seconds and he stacks up the poison, he's going to kill you. In a team fight, he just kills everybody. So he's just extremely, extremely strong. The only reason he's not a little bit higher is just because he can get dumpstered early on by, you know, the previous 4 champions. So he's going to get beat down, but if you have a powerful support to help you through the laning phase, you know, if Nami's giving you free farm or Sona or Xayah or whatever, if they're able to zone off the enemy team and you just get to sit there and farm up to 6, you're going to be quite a force. Okay. Next up, the champion that a lot of people are probably most curious about, I think I'm going to make this the thumbnail for the video, is Cassiopeia. So I saw a couple of people, actually it was the same guy, do this in 2 different games. And I've heard a little bit about this. I don't know if they're, I don't remember. Maybe Firewall probably has a video about it. I don't know. But it actually seems like it might be pretty legit for a couple of reasons. I researched this. And you might be thinking, well, what's changed? Why haven't we ever seen Cassiopeia bottom? I think people have sort of reprioritized certain abilities, and the meta has shifted around a little bit to make her strong in the bot lane. So let me explain why. Now, first of all, you know, I do think that these 5 champions are still going to be stronger than her in the laning phase. So it's not, you know, the AD carries dead meme, only mages are viable bot lane. I think that 2 mages, Karthus and Cassiopeia, are viable in the bot lane, but I think there are lots of AD carries that can still win. Most notably, these 5 are all extremely strong. They all have well over a 50% win rate. They're all very popular. They can win. So it's not that AD carries can't win. I've seen some guides out there, like Pro Builds, says, you know, basically only mages are viable in the bot lane, and that's kind of the meme. Not true. So I want to start off with that. AD carries are still strong. Okay, the right AD carries are strong. Now, if you're playing some of these, you know, garbage tier champs down near the bottom, if you're playing like Kalista, Kog'Maw, Ezreal, Vayne, things like that, then you're going to have a problem. Okay, all right, that was it. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't a super important text there. But anyways, let's talk about Cassiopeia. So can she be viable? Yes. Okay, so what's changed about her? Well, they did buff her earlier. Now, they nerfed her earlier on in the season, I believe, but then they buffed her as well. And a lot of people hadn't really figured out ways to deal with this buff. So the main buff they made to her was they increased the damage on her Q, and they increased the AP ratio on her Q, right? I guess they didn't change her since the last preseason, 7.24B, where they gave her an extra ratio and they reduced the mana cost on her abilities. So we pretty much didn't see her all last season, but they gave her a little buff at the end of the season last season. They gave her another little nudge in 8.14. She was played, I think, earlier on in this season, but she hasn't been touched too much aside from that. So the main reason that people typically play Cassiopeia, she's pretty good against other mid-range mages, right? So she's pretty good against champions like your Orianna type of champs, maybe Talia, Azir, and she's really good against tanks because she does very high sustained damage. So if she's going up against things like Ornn, Sejuani, maybe Gragas to an extent, stuff like that, she can kill them. Okay, so in the tank meta of earlier in the season from a patch like 8.1 to 8.8, where there were 2 to 3 tanks every game, she was necessary to help crack those tanks. She was very good at that. But she struggles against assassins historically, right? Because if they jump on her, she doesn't have a lot of mechanisms to get away cleanly. Like, she can ult them. They can outplay that, though. And she can potentially kite them out. But, you know, realistically, she's going to get bursted out a lot of the time. So she has a hard time in metas that are dominated by things like LeBlanc, by things that are, you know, like Talon, and stuff like that. So that's kind of like the history of Cassiopeia, where she's been played. Another thing why she's usually not played in the bot lane that's important to consider is that her movement speed and a lot of her damage from her Twin Fangs are based on level, which is really weird for a mage, but she can't buy boots, and she's really slow normally. She's at 328. And so she requires levels. In bot lane, you're splitting experience, so you're going to level up a lot slower. And yeah, that's going to be bad because you're going to get less movement speed off of this, and then your Twin Fang, most of the damage comes off of this right here, the base damage on it, which goes up on a per level basis, and then has fairly low AP scaling, has fairly low like bonus magic damage and so forth. So, and this also scales her healing, scales based on level as well. So she has 3 different things that are level dependent. So that's on the rough side if you're in a dual lane, okay? But what are her potential strengths bot lane? Well, she does really high sustained damage. So that's usually the role of a marksman, right? And so she can fulfill that role. She can break tanks. She can take barons quickly. She can take dragons quickly. And that is what, that's why a lot of AD carries exist, right? And so she can step into that and fulfill that same kind of strategic role on a team. Now, AD carries historically are really important for taking towers as well, right? And that's something she doesn't do very well. She does not take towers because your spells don't do damage to towers. You don't get Lichbane. Although Lichbane would be an interesting choice on her. I don't see people do that, but you can spam your abilities a lot and weave in auto attacks. And it gives you movement speed. So, I don't know. Maybe Lichbane would be worth it, but Lichbane is usually built on champions that want to kill somebody in one rotation, so... You know, there are so many good items on her, you know, with Rylai's, Leandries, and things like that, that maybe Lichbane just doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, she usually doesn't have Lichbane. Okay, but taking towers, like, in the early game, you can apply enough pressure and force out the AD carry or the enemy support, and you can take those plates uncontested a lot of times. So that's nice. But then late game... You can't really siege if you don't have a proper AD carry, but you don't have to siege because Baron is ridiculously overpowered right now. So as long as you can get vision control of the Baron pit and force a fight, then you don't need siege champions. Like, you don't need an AD carry to be able to take towers from long range anymore. You don't need that Caitlyn or that Ashe or that Varus to take your towers because you just fight around Baron, force them to come to you, then you just win off of a team fight, or you pick them off with an assassin or something like that. So, sieging is really a relic of the past right now. You just do whatever you have to do to get a hold of the Baron. She does take Baron very well. She is very good at sneak attacks with her ultimate outside of a bush. So, she's very good at both of those. She's very good at team fights. So, she's really good at that style of game. And with the Baron buff, then you can siege and take towers. So, the meta has shifted now to where someone like Cassiopeia can be a pretty reasonable substitute for an AD carry. Now, what about the laning phase? Well, she does quite a bit of damage early on in the game, particularly if you go with this new build. And that's what really sets her apart from a lot of the AD carries that are lower than her on the tier list, right? So, you know, some of these other champions like, you know, Xayah, Xayah, Sivir, Trist, they're going to need multiple items to do, like, significant damage early on. Now, there are some exceptions, right? If Trist is able to proc, like, her full bomb on you at level 6 and then ult you, that's a lot of damage, right? Like, if Caitlyn's able to consistently get headshots, that can be a lot of damage. But by and large, these champions require multiple items to scale. They're going to require at least 2 items before they start to become relevant in most games, whereas Cassiopeia is very good on 0 items. She does a lot of damage early, just poison. I mean, look at the damage, right? So just one hit with this Q is 75. You get bonus movement speed. And then Twin Fang level 1 is 62 damage with a 0.7 ratio. So the 20 AP, you remember that AP that I talked about in the support tier list? Hey, thanks so much for the sub, Thomas. I appreciate it. Very good on Cassiopeia because you have a 0.7 ratio here. And you might say, well, 0.7, that's not that much. It's on less than a 1 second cooldown. So think about that. You know, most champions, their abilities are going to be on a, you know, a much longer cooldown than that, right? But if you hit somebody with this Noxious Blast, then you hit them with 3 Twin Fangs, that's effectively a 210% AP ratio because you're able to cast it so much. So this is deceptively a very large AP ratio for an ability that's on a very short cooldown, right? And so you hit somebody with Noxious Blast, 75 damage, and then you hit them with, let's just say, even 2 Twin Fangs, right? At level 2, it's going to be whatever. Let's just call it 60 damage at level 3. Then that's going to be, what's your starting AP? Let's just say you have like 30 starting AP. You can probably get even more than that. But even at 30 starting AP, you hit them twice with this. It's going to be a 1.4 ratio. That's going to be somewhere around like 35, 36 extra damage. So we're talking 60 times 2 is 120. Plus, you know, like 35 damage or so. That's, what, 160 plus 35 is like 195 plus 75. You know, you're talking like 270 damage. So you hit him with an ability, it's going to be like 270 damage. Probably even more than that if you're weaving in your auto attacks between spells and you can cast even more Twin Fangs on him, all that. She does a lot. A lot of damage for something that's filling into the role of marksman. So that's number one. The thing that's also changed recently that people have figured out is that you can just go full aggression with her early, change your build, and you don't need your mana as much. So one of the main nerfs to Cassiopeia back in the day was they nerfed the mana cost of Twin Fang. So it's very, very expensive to spam this. But, you know, as I just talked about, most of this damage comes from her level, not the amount of level that you put, not the amount of points you put into the ability. You put points in this ability, what do you get out of it? Okay, you get an extra 20 bonus damage, okay? So you have 25% increased cost, but you're only getting 20 extra bonus damage. You know, even if you only have 30 AP, you're getting 34 damage, because this AP ratio is the same. Level 1, level 5, doesn't matter. AP ratio is the same. So if you're getting this 0.7 out of it, you're getting, you know, 36 damage. At level 3, you're doing 96 damage. So you're basically doing 96 base damage. And you're gaining 20 more. So you're gaining like 20% extra damage. But it's costing you 25% extra mana. So it's not mana efficient at all. And as you level it up even more, then it becomes increasingly less mana efficient. So eventually you're going to do like maybe 80 extra damage here in the mid game when you might have, you know, 100 AP, where you're going to be getting 70 extra AP off of this. You're going to be level 9, so it's going to be 154 base damage, so 84 plus whatever that is, 154 base damage. Yeah, you're getting a little bit more damage, right? But it's costing you way, way more mana. So people have figured out, well, what if I just put 1 point in Twin Fang and just stack a bunch of AP? Don't even mess with Tear of the Goddess. Don't mess with Rod of the Ages. Let's just go Ludens and then Rylai's, get a crap ton of AP, and then just blast people. And instead, you can put your points over here, which is much, much more efficient, right? Because it's only 5 extra mana per. So here, you're paying 5 mana to get 50 extra damage. Whereas here, you're paying 10 mana to get 20 extra damage, effectively. Now, this can be spammed. So this ultimately could put out more DPS if you put a lot of points into this than your Q can. But it's much, much less efficient for, like, small trades, right? Where you just land your Noxious Blast, hit a couple of Qs, you know, and that's it. So that's what people figured out, is you can actually just level up your Noxious Blast first. I mean, this is on a pretty short cooldown, too, at 3.5. You can level this up first. It also gives you better wave clear, because it can hit multiple, you know, multiple minions. And it gives you the bonus movement speed. So now you don't have to take Phase Rush anymore because you have much higher bonus movement speed because you're leveling up your Q first. So if you don't take Phase Rush, then you can go Comet. And you know what's really good with Comet? A bunch of spells. So while you're hitting them with Twin Fang, you're actually lowering the cooldown on Comet by quite a bit. Right? Because single target abilities lower the cooldown by 20%. And then your damage over time lowers it by an additional 5%. So whenever you Noxious Blast somebody and hit them twice, then you're effectively lowering the cooldown by like 50% on Comet. So your cooldown's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 seconds, maybe even less. Like 5 to 10 seconds cooldown on Comet. So you can just like keep trading with Comet just over and over again. You just wait on it. You know, just Noxious Blast, Twin Fang, wait 5 seconds. Your Noxious Blast is up. Your Comet's back up. Noxious Blast, Twin Fang. It's just a very, very strong trading pattern. And so this has completely changed the paradigm about how people are thinking about Cassiopeia and how they're building Cassiopeia. Because you're no longer as blue dependent. You don't have to buy tier. You don't have to buy Raw of the Ages. You just get, you know, a more efficient mana item with Ludens that is on board immediately. You don't have to wait 10 minutes for Rod or 20 minutes for tier. You can just immediately have that power spike, just come right out the gates, apply a lot of map pressure, and just get your Rylai's faster, which is also going to allow you to kite better. So you don't have to have that phase rush, you get Comet better, and all that kind of stuff. So this has completely changed a lot of how Cassiopeia is working these days. She's also been very successful in the bot lane. But I put her on here as or in the mid lane rather. She's been a lot more successful, but people are even playing her in the bot lane now. Yeah, 60% win rate. Now, not a huge sample size, but 254 games. You see everybody's running Comet now on her. And if you look, everybody's going Ludens. Nobody's going Tier. Nobody's going Raw of the Ages anymore. That's the new technology, is the Ludens plus the Rylai's. And then they did buff Leandri's a while ago, too, which is very good on her as well. So, that's it. Now you have really good wave clear. You have excellent last hitting, because it refunds the mana on your Twin Fangs whenever you last hit somebody, so that helps you out with your last hitting. One problem with a lot of mages in the bot lane, if you think about things like Vlad or Swain, is they're really bad at last hitting under tower. So if you get forced under tower because you don't have any AD, it's tough to last hit. But it's not that tough with Cassiopeia to last hit. So that's really helpful. That's a common theme with Karthus too, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But yeah, you've got a lot of kill threat early on. You have good wave clear. You have excellent scaling. You can take dragons. You can take Baron. You combo very well with a lot of the other mages bot lane. You know, Leona engages. You drop a miasma on them so they can't flash. Noxious blast them, run them down, eat them to death, right? And here, you can actually just spam E's to kill people too, because they're much lower mana. So even if, you know, they don't have the Noxious blast on them, you're not getting that bonus damage, but you're still dealing pretty decent base damage to, you know, you're not losing as much, in other words, if you need to spam this to try to run somebody down at the end, as you would, because you get no bonus out of this. You're just paying a lot of mana to spam this to try to kill somebody with no benefit. You're just paying 80 for this if you level this up first. But because you're leveling it up last, they level this up. People are even leveling this up after miasma. So they're leveling up this, and then they're leveling up miasma second, which is crazy. But I think the thought process is you just don't want to have to pay that much mana for this. I'm not sure if that's entirely correct. That's a little extreme, but it might be. Because you're not going to have Tier, you're not going to have Rod. You're probably, if you're bot lane, you're probably not going to get a lot of blues. So that could be correct. I mean, it does apply a greater slow to people. It does pretty good damage. So that's what everybody's doing. They're maxing this first, this second, and they're maxing this last. So it's great. Good. Like I said, it's got all of those extra abilities. And so you have the scaling of like a really hyper carry, 80 carry, something like a Jinx, something like a Twitch, you know, on the same type of level with Cassiopeia, but then you also have a lot of threat early, and you have more utility with your miasma slow, the debilitating poison so people can't flash. Then you have petrifying gaze, which is a really powerful ultimate as well. Good team fight ult. Good follow-up if your Leona engages or your Xayah roots somebody or whatever. Very handy on a low cooldown. So I think she's the new technology. Like I said, I'm not ready to say she's tier 1 yet. I'll have to see that borne out, but I think she's definitely worth consideration. She's also one of the hardest champions in the game to play correctly, because you have to kite with your spells really well, and she's got a lot of skill shots. So she's really hard to play. That's another thing that kind of brings her down from tier 1 in my eyes, but she's really, really strong. So you just want to rush Ludens as fast as possible, then just Rylai's Leandri's. Don't even mess with any stacking. Just come out the gate swinging. Just get those kills. Okay, so she's the new technology. She's the new hotness. I predicted that Karthus was potentially going to be pretty good on this patch as well. And he is. So I started him off at tier 3 because I wasn't quite sure how strong he was, but I was one of the only people putting Karthus on an 80 carry tier list. Yeah, he's very good. It turns out as 80 carry. And I talked about him on the last 80 carry tier list, but then also in the mid lane tier list. So what makes Karthus so strong right now is the changing to runes. So he was a Dark Harvest abuser. He still wants Dark Harvest. It did get nerfed. But it's still very good on him because he can apply it just across the map with his ultimate. But the main thing that's, you know, really strong on him is the combination of Presence of Mind and Ultimate Hunter. So Presence of Mind, anytime you get a kill, it reduces the cooldown of your ultimate by 10%. It says of your ultimate's maximum cooldown, that's a misprint. It's of the remaining cooldown. I'm almost 100% that it's like your remaining cooldown. So it's not the 200. It's like if you have 150 left, it's 50 of that. I think. It's applied after cooldown reduction and Ultimate Hunter. Okay, so it is of your max, but it's after cooldown reduction and it's after Ultimate Hunter. So basically, and Ultimate Hunter is the other one that makes him very strong, which is basically every time you get a kill or an assist, it lowers the cooldown of your ult by 15%. So what this means is if you get a 20% cooldown item, you get your Ludens, right? And then let's say that you're level 11, it's 180 base cooldown. And let's say that you have this stacked up by then, right? You have, let's just say the full 15%, right? So you have your 180. So you got your 180, you have your 20% cooldown, so times 0.8. Then you have your Ultimate Hunter, which is 15%, so times 0.85. Now you're left with 122. And then let's say you kill 2 people in a team fight, times 0.8, because you're going to get 2 triggers of Presence of Mind. 97 seconds. So that's almost a 50% cooldown reduction. It's close. It started at 180. So it's like a 45 to 50% cooldown reduction because of those runes. Even if you only have 20% cooldown reduction off of Ludens. That's really, really strong. I mean, it's a super powerful ultimate. If you get even more cooldown reduction, then that can be even stronger. Now, a lot of people on Karthus are also skipping tier. That seems to be the trend on a lot of former tier champs. People are just skipping it and just going for more power earlier just because the meta is so fast right now. So yeah, most people are still doing the Dark Harvest, and then you're just going for Ludens, and then something like a Morello, or a Death Cap, or just some other like immediate fast power. People aren't going Leandries anymore because Leandries doesn't trigger Dark Harvest resets, so that's something to note. That's an itemization change. But Morellonomicon, just getting that double pin. This is what's important, is you get the Ludens, and then you get the Sorcerer Boots, and then you get Oblivion Orb for the penetration, because penetration is so strong on a champion like Karthus who can hit multiple targets and who has pretty high base damages. So that's really the goal. And then after you get Oblivion Orb, you're kind of priced in at just finishing Morellonomicon. It's just sort of worth it at the end. That's also a decent counter to Soraka. Like, people are going to pick Soraka into you a lot. Or if they have, you know, Redemption or any other type of healing, Morellonomicon can make sure that that's lowered by the time you get your ult off. In some cases. Not in all cases, but in some. So that's going to make him very strong. Now, there's a good argument to be made for Rabadon's Death Cap as well. Now, don't forget the penetration, while I'm mentioning this, also applies to Dark Harvest. So Dark Harvest does end up being magic damage, and so it makes your Dark Harvest do even more. And then Coup de Grace stacks really well with this as well. Anything else that could be rune damage, I think those are your only rune damage things, also benefit from penetration, so that's very good. And then Rabadon's Death Cap, you have pretty nice ratios on your abilities. A 0.75 on your ult. Remember, this is going to hit all 5 people, like guaranteed, unless they have Hourglass. So that's a massive amount of damage. Right? That's 2,000 guaranteed damage, pretty much. And it's going to have like a 375% ratio. So it's just like mind-blowing amount of damage. And then, like, your Lay Waste, it doesn't look like it's a lot, but this is the same kind of deal as Cassiopeia. It's on a 1-second cooldown. So, yeah, it's a 0.6, but you can cast, like, 3 of them before even the shortest of cooldowns on most other champions, 3 seconds, on their spammable abilities. So, it's really like a 1.8 ratio that does, like, you know, 780 damage. So, that's kind of, if you're hitting your Qs properly. So, it's a lot more damage than it seems. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this. If you've seen a Karthus in your game, either mid lane or bot lane, it's not unusual to see him have, like, double damage, the second place damage dealer in a game. It's just, like, an insane amount of guaranteed damage. So that's just his whole thing, is he just adds a whole lot of pressure. He can last hit really well in the bot lane with Lay Waste. He can push really well with a combination of Lay Waste plus Defile. He scales extremely well. He takes Barons well. He takes Dragons well. He's awesome in team fights, just like Cassiopeia. Yeah, he doesn't take towers well, but guess what? You don't have to fight and siege for towers anymore. You just force a team fight around Baron, which is up every 6 minutes now. He can do that. So it makes him really strong, and he can poke very well. He scales really well, like I said, with Dark Harvest, Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace. He really benefits heavily from the extra 20 AP early on. He's very good with, or he's pretty good with a lot of these other hard CC champs. So, like, you know, Leona engages on someone, you just drop the Wall of Pain on them and just start spamming your Qs. They're probably going to die. He has global pressure, so you can finish people off across the map. So he basically has, like, a permanent ability to roam. So he's just extremely strong. Now, he can get blown up by assassins, but if you're in the bot lane with him, you've got your support to ward for you, your support to peel for you, potentially. So I think that makes him really strong. And he's one of those champions, even if he falls behind early, even if he dies a couple of times, he still has a lot of utility just because he has that guaranteed damage. You know, it could be a 12-12 Karthus, and when he has 6 items at the end of the game, he can just press ult, and he's going to knock off more than half of everybody's HP. So it's like you just can't stop him. Even if you kill him, he's still going to be able to press ult, you know? So even if he misses everything and just flashes into the middle of the enemy team with his Defile ticking and then just presses ult, you know, he's just going to murder a whole team. So Karthus still going to be very strong. So the runes you want to run with him: Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace. You can also run Taste of Blood. I might actually run Taste of Blood. It's just a little safer in the laning phase. Remember, your Q can trigger this too. You don't have to auto attack for that. It's any damage. So very nice. It's easy for him to stack up those eyeball collections too, so he's going to get that AP even faster. It's easy to stack up Ulti Hunter. So, you know, these look like scaling runes, but they scale really fast on Karthus. And he has really high base damages because he's a mage. So I think that Karthus is definitely very strong right now. So both of these are worth considering. Especially if your team is overloaded on AD, you know, you have like a Zed mid lane and an Irelia top lane and a Kha'Zix jungle. You've got some pretty good AP options with Cassiopeia and Karthus here. Okay, then we'll just really quickly go through the rest. I think, honestly, you should be playing one of these 7 champions. If you're not doing that, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage right now. I think each of them is kind of, to an extent, unique in what they do, and they can be useful in a bunch of different situations. So I think Lucian should almost always be taken if you're competent on him at all. But then Jhin is very good with kind of the, he's sort of the best with a lot of the mages in the bot lane. Draven is one of the best do-it-yourself, just blow it up and snowball hard champs. Miss Fortune's probably one of the better team fight champs that has really good sustain early. Twitch is one of the best scaling champions. It's very sneaky. He can abuse people that don't respect his invisibility. He can tilt the enemy team really easily. Cassiopeia, excellent all-in kill threat early on. Very good scaling. Great at taking Baron. Great at team fighting. Difficult to play. Karthus, you know, just guaranteed damage later on in the game. So I think all of those are good. Okay, Sivir, still okay. The problem is she just requires items to get going. She runs out of mana really easy early on. But she is very good with Stormrazor because that crit deals the crit damage to everything in the wave with Ricochet. So it clears waves super fast, and it provides pretty good harassment because if it bounces around to enemies when you're trying to siege a tower or something like that. Remember, you don't have to siege towers, but if you are, you know, then that can be pretty good. So she's just kind of the queen of wave clear. She has excellent wave clear, and she's really good with goon squad comps. So if you have something like an Aatrox and Irelia on your team and you just want to run at them and just kill them, and you're just okay playing the wingman or wing girl, in this case, wing woman, then Sivir's great for that. So good ult, good utility, excellent wave clear, pretty decent option. Problem, you're going to get bulldozed early. If you play against these champions, you can't apply pressure, so you're just going to let champions like Karthus, Cassiopeia, and Twitch scale up. They're going to outscale you, and that's a very scary prospect. And then, like, Miss Fortune, Draven, Jhin, and Lucian are just going to bust you up, assuming the supports are, you know, both playing aggressive things and they're both competent bot lane. You're going to get busted up early, potentially. So that's rough. Now, Caitlyn does have a new piece of technology, which I'll talk about really quick, that people have been trying out more and more. It's this Grasp of the Undying overheal Caitlyn, which has been popping up a lot. Now, I think that if this were Challenger, if you're a Challenger level player, Caitlyn is going to be stronger. She's probably going to be high tier 2, maybe. But the problem in solo queue is people just don't know how to play Caitlyn correctly. They don't drop the traps. They don't know how to combo. They don't abuse those auto attacks. If you just sit there and farm with Caitlyn, she's terrible. If you just last hit and that's it. You really have to be landing those auto attacks on the enemy and just punishing them. Every time they go up to try to last hit, you're auto attacking them. And you really have to attrition them down and force them to take a bad back. If they don't take a bad back, and if you're not up by 20 CS at the end of the laning phase minimum, then you failed as Caitlyn. And that's why I really don't like her a lot in solo queue, is just because, like, it's on you to outplay the enemy. Right? If you just go even, you fail. So you need to be harassing a lot. You need to be dropping traps in good places. You need to be comboing correctly. It's not just enough to headshot them if you trap them. You need to be, at a minimum, hitting them with a Q and headshotting them. And the best Caitlyn's are going to net backwards, headshot, and then as they're netting backwards, they'll have their Q animation going, because you can do that. So while you're falling backwards, she's already putting her gun out for the Q, and then you hit them with the Q and headshot them. So you should be able to, they step on a trap, headshot, net backwards, Q, headshot. So you should get 2 headshots and a Q off every time they hit a trap, if you're playing her correctly. Bare minimum, headshot plus 1 Q. I see so many Caitlyn's, if they drop a trap at all they'll do is headshot. And that is a fail. You need to get every ounce of damage you can get, because she's terrible at scaling. She's really bad in this meta, right? So she's going to get Stormrazor, which is okay. Rapid Fire is okay, but now she's just a poor man's Jhin, right? She's just going to do a lot less damage than Jin's 4th shot with her headshot, or with her, I guess if she has her headshot, it's probably similar damage. But if it's just a normal auto attack with the Stormrazor Rapid Fire, it's not enough most of the time. And she doesn't have the same kind of tools that Jhin has. She doesn't have the follow-up W. Yeah, you can set a trap on somebody if your support lands some engage, which is really nice. Or, like, if Thresh lands a hook, you know, you can set up a trap and he'll drag him across the trap. But I just think that Jhin is just a better Caitlyn. He just applies more pressure. He has more base damage. He's easier to play. But Caitlyn is still pretty good. You know, her Q does apply wave clear. She does have the traps. She does have the range if you abuse it correctly. So if you're like a diamond plus, Caitlyn can be good. So what's up with this new build then? Okay, so Fleet Footwork is still pretty good, but they did rework Grasp a while ago. And one of the major things is this not only heals you, but it does extra damage on hit. Right? Equal to your total health. Now, attack speed is not that strong on Caitlyn because she has very low base attack speed. She has some of the lowest base attack speed in the whole game. So it's just not a really good stat on her. It's okay, but you're not missing out on as much by not taking something like Alacrity. And so Grasp is going to give you that extra bit of sustain for more pressure. It's going to deal that extra damage to you, and it's going to give you extra bonus health to make you a little bit tankier for some of these trades. And then something that I don't see a lot of people doing, but I'm pretty sure it works, is taking Shield Bash. Now, the reason for this is when you take Overheal, which a lot of people take as their secondary, whenever you go past your maximum heal, you get a shield, right? If we go look at, so Shield Bash says, whenever you gain a shield, your next basic attack against a champion does this bonus damage, right? So 1.5% of your max health, a little bit of your shield amount, and a base amount, right? So on Caitlyn, if this gets activated, you know, you're probably only going to hit them for an extra, you know, whatever, 6 damage. That's still 6 extra damage you can do. Maybe more than that. Maybe it's closer to 10, 6 to 10 damage. But it does not have a cooldown. That's the important point about this. It does not have a cooldown. So if we look at Overheal, healing in excess of your maximum health is converted to a shield for an amount of up to this amount. This shield lasts 6 seconds and it decays, blah, blah, blah. So you get a small shield. So how this should work is you walk up with Caitlyn, you auto-attack them. They might auto-attack you back. Some of the minions are going to auto-attack you back for hitting a champion. It's going to break this shield a little bit. Okay, so then you're going to drop down to maybe 99% of your maximum health. This has no cooldown. You walk up again. You trigger Grasp of the Undying on them again. It's going to heal you. You're going to have Doran's Blade. That will also heal you. You're going to get Shield Bash again. You're going to walk up. You're going to auto-attack them. You're going to get the Shield Bash bonus. Minions are going to hit you. They're going to hit you back. It's going to break your shield. You see the pattern here? Every time you walk up, you're going to take a little bit of damage on your Overheal shield. And then as soon as you heal it back up with your Grasp of the Undying procs, or if your support heals you. If you have a Sona, particularly, and Sona is very popular and very strong right now, every time she shields you, you're going to get Shield Bash. It's also going to overheal you and keep your overheal stacks up. If Nami heals you, it's going to overheal you, so you get a shield, then you do the damage. And this is going to give you extra armor as well. So it's really incremental. You have to really be trading a lot of auto attacks. You have to have overheal, grasp, and then Doran's. And this can add up. Now, you can take second wind for additional healing if you want. You're probably going to be pretty close to full health, so it's not that great. So a lot of times I'd probably just take bone plating. It'll save you against all ends. And then overgrowth is going to give you a little bit more health as well. It's not a great rune, but it's okay, I guess. Now, you can get something like... some people take Legend Bloodline, which will give you extra lifesteal early on. So that will allow you to get even more shielding. So... I think that's a pretty scandalous combination that you can get there with her that can be pretty good. Now you might say, well, why don't people just do Fleet instead? Well, you can do Fleet, but it has a cooldown. You have to walk around to charge it up. I mean, I guess Grasp does as well, but I'm pretty sure Grasp does more damage. Yeah, this only restores health. So Grasp restores health, but Grasp also does damage, and it gives you extra HP. So you're not going to get a ton of HP off of Grasp in the laning phase, but let's say even if you just get off like 15 attacks, Grasp attacks, that's still like 45 extra health. It's okay. But I think that's kind of the new technology, is it's just going to be up more often, and it does extra damage on hit, gives you permanent health, and heals you. It doesn't trigger off of minions, though. Like with... Fleet Footwork, you can trigger this off of minions. Although I think it's less. It's only 20% effective off of minions. So they've nerfed that a lot. So it's not really that effective to use it on minions. So that's what a lot of people are doing now with Caitlyn, is they're doing this Grasp, Overgrowth, Bone Plating. Now some people are taking Demolish instead of Shield Bash, which could be legit as well. I mean, Shield Bash is going to give you better autos on the enemy. Demolish will let you take towers faster, so maybe Demolish is correct here, and Demolish is very strong. So, it's something to think about. One thing about Demolish, though, is you have to step up to 600 range to trigger it, and you have to stand there for a full, 4 seconds to trigger it as well. So, that's risky. You know, with Caitlyn, you always want to be staying max range. You want to be staying that 650 range. So that's why I think the Shield Bash could be better, just because it's not as risky. Now, if your support also has Demolish, one thing I didn't realize until I heard this on the dive, Kobe Ajat's show, and Azale, is that if you have 2 champions with Demolish, it stacks twice as fast. So it would only take like 1.5 seconds to stack it, or 2 seconds, or whatever. I think it's 4 seconds to stack now. Now it would stack in 2 seconds. So if you have something like a, I don't know, a Nami that also has Demolish, and you have a Caitlyn that has Demolish, you can stack it up in 2 seconds for both people. They both auto-attack it, and it triggers twice, and it just, almost takes a full plate right there. So if you have good synergy with your support, if you know they're taking Demolish, or if you're like a challenger and you just know that everybody's going to be onto that game, everyone's going to be taking Demolish, then I think Demolish could be better. But if you're just playing in silver or something and you can't count on your support to take Demolish, and it's just going to be too risky to step up that close to the tower and try to charge it up for 4 seconds, then I think that Shield Bash is a fine choice, particularly if you have something like a Sona or a Nami on your team. So, anyways, very good pressure champion, absolutely garbage at scaling, and if you don't apply that pressure, if you're not getting the headshot mechanics correctly, you're not auto-attacking them constantly in the laning phase, then you're really failing as Caitlyn. So if you're really good, if you're a Smurf, or, you're just a very good technical player, Caitlyn can be great, but really hard to use correctly. Just because, and it's not that, you're going to fail in the sense you're going to go 0-12 as Caitlyn. She's a fairly safe champion, hopefully. She has traps, she has her net, she has 650 range. So staying safe is not the problem. It's just that staying safe is not an option. It's not the optimal way to play Caitlyn. You need to be super aggressive. That's the thing. Is you're not going to fail by going 0-12. You're going to fail by going even in your lane and getting outscaled by the Xayah, you're going to let get to 3 items. Or you're going to let that Karthus get to 3 items. And then you're going to complain and say, well, I won my lane. I was up 5 CS. I didn't die. My top lane died 5 times. It's not my fault this Karthus is fed. It's yeah, it is, because you didn't apply enough pressure. You needed to be up 25 CS in the laning phase. You needed to take their tower first. It's not good to go even. So you fail if you go even as Caitlyn. And that's why I'm really hesitant to recommend her for anybody, even though she can be strong in the right circumstances. Okay. Kai'Sa's just really fallen from grace. She's having a very hard time right now. She got nerfed a lot. She gets bullied hard early game. Her base damages aren't super high. She's fairly low range. I think she has 525 range. And she's just going to get busted up by like Draven, Jhin, Lucian. Any of these champs are just going to dominate her in the early game. Even things like Cassiopeia are probably going to be able to beat her up. So is she still good on like 3 items? Yeah, she's one of the best hyperscaling champs in the game, right? But she's not as good on Stormrazor. Like, she has to get Stormrazor early just because she has to be able to do something before 25 minutes into the game. But she's not nearly as good with Stormrazor as someone like Jhin or as someone like Draven. So you're just gonna get murdered in lane, I feel like, a lot of the time. Now, if you get ahead, if you get a couple of kills, yeah, she can be good. I just think the meta's too fast for her right now. I think that towers matter a lot, too. And the fact that you have really short range and that you're going to get pushed in a lot of times. You have decent wave clear with your Q, but you're going to get pushed in, you know, by Lucian or by Jhin most of the time, unless your support is way better than them. So, yeah, she's just one of the better hyperscalers. I prefer Twitch, though, because Twitch has more tools to get back into the game with his invisibility and his extreme team fighting and, like, his extreme power off of just one item, Blather and King. I think that if you want to play a scaling champion that's going to get dumpstered in lane and just kind of hope for the mid game, you know, I would play Twitch over her easily. But she's still okay. She is an okay AP option, but now that there are like real AP options here, that sort of takes away a little bit more of her strategic usefulness. Before, you know, if you had an all 80 team, you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to go AP Kai'Sa. I'm going to rush Gensu's, Nashor's, Deathcap. But they have nerfed Gensu's a lot, particularly in terms of its scaling with AP. So that option's just not as appealing as it used to be, when now you can actually go a real AP threat like Cassiopeia and Karthus if your team is all AD. So she's just lost a lot of her strategic edge. She's been nerfed several times. She's not that great in the overall meta in the sense that she just doesn't have enough power early. She doesn't threaten towers early enough. So can she still be good at 2 to 3 items? Can you still win with her? Sure. But it's a lot harder than it used to be. Okay, and then finally, Tier 3. I just wouldn't play these champs, but if you insist, you know, Xayah can still be good if you have a Rakan. Like, she's an okay, you know, sort of team fight option. She has pretty good wave clear early on. The problem is she needs multiple items. She's kind of in the same boat as Kai'Sa, where she has to get Stormrazor early, but at the same time, she really doesn't want to use that item that much. It doesn't scale. She wants her traditional crit back. If they bring back real crit, she'll be great because her feathers on her E scale with real crit, but they don't scale off of Stormrazor. It gives you a crit, but it doesn't give you critical strike, the statistic, and that means that her E doesn't scale nearly as well as it used to. So, you know, if you have a Rakan on your team and they have a really weak lane, you know, they have like a Vayne or an Ezreal or something like that, and you think, you know, you're not going to get bullied too hard in the early game, maybe you can run with Xayah, but it's rough. Now, Varus is another one. I didn't watch Philol's video. He was making some kind of video that was talking about hybrid Varus being good again. I'm not sure about that. I do think that Gensu's plus Blather and King is very good on him, and then probably Hurricane after that. So he's okay, but once again, he just doesn't do a lot of damage early. He's just going to get muscled by a lot of the other champs. I mean, 41%. Now, it's not a lot of games played, but he's not in a good spot right now. He just takes a long time to come online. He doesn't have a lot of damage early. He has nice utility with his ultimate, but he's just going to get dumpstered most of the time early on. They nerfed a lot of the base damage on his E, which was brutal, his on-hit damage. So it's like, yeah, if you get a kill late game and you get that, you trigger your passive, you get a lot of attack speed, and you have Gensu's plus Blade, yeah, you can just start deleting whole teams, but you're not going to get to that point probably. They're just going to crush you early, and you don't have a lot of mechanics to catch up. You have your ult, sort of, but it's just going to be too rough, I think, on Varus. Tristana is a champion who is scary if she gets on multiple items, and in theory, she does have pretty good damage up front early on, right? So her bomb can do an alarming amount of damage. So it can do, you know, 132 damage plus the 55. So that's like 177 damage with like 110% bonus AD ratio. So that bomb does a lot, and it resets. You can double jump on people, which has 85 base damage. So that's pretty nice. And her ultimate has 300 base damage, which is absolutely disgusting. Like, it does a lot of damage. That's more damage than a lot of mages early on, and people forget about that. It's not just a safety thing. It's an execute. You know, if you're level 6 and your Leona engages on somebody, you drop a bomb on them, jump on them, and just, like, stack up your bombs and then just ult them away. They're going to blow up and die. Like, it's a lot of damage. So she has a lot of damage early. She pushes pretty well because of her E. She scales really well. You know, she gets a lot of extra range. She gets a ton of attack speed, up to 110% attack speed. So she has the potential to snowball, and she is very safe. You know, she can jump away from champs, right? Like, that rocket jump, they're really annoying, where it buffers, where if she's in the middle of her jump, no CC works on her pretty much. So she has, you know, the rocket jump, which has a reset, and she has her ult on a low cooldown that can keep her safe. So she looks all good. But the bottom line is it just takes too long to get the explosive charge charged up. By the time you get this, Draven's already going to have you dead. Lucian's going to have you dead. And so she's okay, you know, she might deserve to be tier 2. Like, maybe you put her up there above someone like Caitlyn, potentially. But did I close my pro builds? We need to go ahead and finish this up. I know this is getting way too long. But I just wanted to be thorough here, especially about the mages that are starting to come up a little bit. I mean, she's 53%, you know. Stormrazor, once again, not amazing on her because she doesn't have a lot of upfront burst damage, but it's okay. So she's all right. I mean, but she's going to have a really hard time if you start losing because she gets pushed in a tower and her explosive shot makes it really hard to last hit under tower. So I think that is definitely a consideration with her. Ashe is okay. Ashe does have really good range. I have seen the Grasp of the Undying build on Ashe. Same premise as Caitlyn. If you can pressure people out with her 600 range early, it is pretty good. You do lose out on, like, lethal tempo, which is pretty good on her later. But if you think you're going to be able to bully people out, you're very good at sneaking in those auto attacks early. I do think that something like Grasp can be good. Although Ashe does benefit heavily from attack speed, a lot more than Caitlyn does. So sacrificing the alacrity out of the precision tree could potentially be a big deal. Not having something like lethal tempo could be a big deal because her flurry, if you do have a lot of attack speed, is very, very good on her. So, you know, we'll see. But she does have an arrow, which is nice too. So that does get you back in the game. It's much longer range than Varus. It has a larger hitbox. So you do still have utility. You can pick people off across the map. Also, her hawk shot is very good for tracking the jungler. So she has that in terms of utility. But her damage is pretty anemic because, you know, critical strike just ends up doing extra. So she does do bonus damage plus 100% of your critical strike chance. Bonus 80 damage. So if you have, you know, 50% critical strike chance, it will do 60% AD as bonus physical damage. So she can't crit, but she does, like, steady damage over time. So she's pretty good at kiting. If you have someone like a Xayah or a Brand or any other Leandri's user on your team, it's actually really, really nice because her slow will allow the Leandri's to trigger without them having to get a Rylai's. So, and obviously if you hit your arrow, then they're going to be able to hit all of their skills, or if they hit their skill, you can follow up the arrow. So she does have pretty good synergy with the mage's bot lane. It's just her early game damage is not that great, although she has good poke, pretty good wave clear, good utility with her hawk shot. So I could see a world, if you're really good on Ashe, where she could go up to potentially tier 2, but she has no escapes, right? She doesn't have anything to speed her up. She has no dashes. So if she gets caught out, she is dead. So you really need to trust your support to peel for you. And you better pray they don't have a Fed Assassin on the enemy team. But she's okay. Jinx, Hyperscaler, very good on 3 items, very bad early. You know, doesn't have a ton of base damage. She has, like, okay wave clear. The Chompers are kind of a decent follow-up. You can definitely win games on Jinx, but I just feel like, once again, if you want kind of a weaker champion in lane and you want a Hyperscaler, I'd go with Twitch just because he has more chances to get back in the game with his invisibility. And he's just a lot stronger off a single item than she is, I think. Okay, honorable mentions. If you're a Heimerdinger one-trick or a Heimer god, he can be good early game, but I wouldn't recommend him to people unless you have a ton of games on him. You have to get ahead early. He's like a worse version of Caitlyn, I think. You have to get ahead early. You have to completely snowball your advantage, or you're going to get outscaled later, and you have to hit stuff. You know, you got to hit your rockets, you got to hit your grenades, you got to position your turrets correctly. You got to get those laser resets. Like, it's just really hard to play him optimally. You got to be able to last hit, even though your turrets are sitting there just zapping for little amounts of damage on CS. It makes it really hard to last hit with him early on, I think, before you get a lot of AP. So that's rough. Wouldn't play Vayne pretty much ever. She's short range. Yes, she scales. Play Twitch if you want to scale her. Play Karthus. Play Cassiopeia. I know Vayne is fun. She can dodge stuff. If she gets ahead, you know, you get 3 kills in the laning phase. Of course, she can be effective. She's decent with just Blade of the Ruined King, but I feel like she's still just going to get dumpstered by a lot of the early game champs. And she's just too risky. Like, if you get Blade, and especially if you get Blade plus Ginsu's, you know, she can do a lot of damage. Now, if they bring tanks back, you know, if you start seeing more Ornns after his rework, or you start seeing Sejuani come back into the meta, or, you know, Mundo starts coming back into the meta, then Vayne will come up a little bit. Then I could see her moving as high as, like, maybe tier 2 if we start to see tanks again. But she's not going to be there until we start seeing the tanks. Like, that true damage, especially with Ginsu's, is very powerful against tanks, but against squishy champions, it's just not going to work to have to do 8 auto attacks to kill somebody when they're going to kill you in 2 hits with most things that are out there right now. So I think that's weak. Ezreal, just don't ever play him. He has a lot of fun, but after the nerf to his wave clear, he's just even more combo reliant than usual. You really need to be hitting your W's plus your Q's. His damage early is very weak. You're getting tier, they're getting BF sword. You know, you're completing your Sheen, they're completing their Stormrazor. It's just not a very good equation for Ezreal a lot of the time. So he's a lot of fun. I love Ezreal. He's one of my favorite champs to play when I have to play AD carry, but he's really, really bad right now, particularly after the nerf to his ult. Swain is okay if you have a mage bot lane. You know, you have a Xayah because you can combo the CC with him. You know, they CC, you yank him back, you hit him with your Q. And then he ends up being kind of like a tanky mage, but he just takes too long to scale off of Rod. If you want to play a mage, just play Cassiopeia or Karthus. Kalista, really bad. Just don't play her. I don't know why they want to gut her so hard, but she's okay with just Blade of the Ruined King, but I think she's just going to get muscled by other champions. Can you win with her if you're extremely good? You probably can, but I mean, maybe once they rework the 3 real quick hits, I forgot what it's called. Like right now she uses lethal tempo. Like they're buffing Hail of Blades tremendously on the next patch. It's going to do 125 like at all levels, I think, is what people are saying. So Hail Blades last 2 seconds, and each basic attack refreshes the duration to 2 seconds. Wow, I didn't realize that. Ignore it, so you can go over the attack speed cap. Huh. So they're buffing this up to 125%, so champions like Kalista, who really, really love attack speed early on, might like this. That might be a good buff to her. Now, they are removing the bonus AD. We'll see. They're changing her for next patch. But right now, I think she's garbage. It's possible she's good, but she's usually a lot better in a tank meta where you can throw an Alistar into the team. I guess you can throw, like, Leona or Rakan. Like, if you're really, really good on Kalista, you can make her work. But she's very hard to play, and Riot just does not like her. And they've said that she's very difficult to balance, and they're pretty much just going to dumpster her for the time being. So I wouldn't bother learning her if you don't already know her. And then Kog'Maw, just forget this champion exists. He's terrible. He's immobile. He does scale pretty well, but, you know, once again, you want a scaling champ, just play Twitch. He's just a much better version. Even Kaisa, going to be a better version. He just doesn't do anything else. You know, like, he's just a sitting duck. He does have his ult to finish people off, which is okay, I guess. Like, you've got your ooze to slow people down, but you're just going to get absolutely murdered most of the time if you play Kog'Maw right now. So I just would not even think about it. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. If you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe. It does help other people find it. You know, I am one of the few content creators that actually tries to break down some of these new builds. I don't just throw up an all caps video and say, oh, well, they're playing it in Korea, or, oh, we saw it in this tournament. I actually do the research and try to explain to the best of my ability why some of these picks could actually be viable. And if it's not viable, if it's just a clickbait, you know, flash in the pan type of champion, then I'm not going to have it on the tier list. But a champion like Cassiopeia and Karthus makes sense logically. We're seeing people have success with it. Then, you know, I'll put it on there and I'll talk about it. Not a lot of other people do that. So, anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.